All right. Hi there, everyone. Happy holidays. Welcome to Bleav in Bills. Adam Bonini, Sal Majorana, and our guest today, Alaina Getzenberg from ESPN. Been on the beat with her for a number of years. Both of us have. Sal does a terrific job. And Alaina, it looks as if you're coming to us from like on the scene. You're there at One Bills Drive. Welcome to the show.
I'm honored. It's when I was so excited to join with two of my favorites. They're, always something to talk about with Sal and Bonini. So it's a pleasure to join you guys. Honored to be here.
She's honored to be with two guys who are old enough to be her father.
I wasn't going to say that.
Well, I will say, hey, but you know what? For folks, I mean, when you walk into the media room at One Bills Drive, like there are certain people that like that's their seat. Nothing's assigned like on a Media Wednesday or whatever, but that Sal is front row far right. And that Alaina, listen, I got to give you credit. You're in the front row. Everyone knows your front row podium slight left, and everyone knows. And so that means you've earned those spots. That is the sign of like respect in that room. I don't have that. I don't know if I earned it or I just took it. Like I just claimed it myself. Maybe it's the way of putting it, because I do think it's something that comes with. I'm here. I try to come every day. There's availability, so I think I'm also here a lot. So that it's like, well, I might as well sit in the same spot. It makes it easier. So, but yes. No, Sal's wouldn't even go near Sal's seat. So
yes, of course, she's also the shortest one in the room, so she has to.
Yeah. So it helps when you're short. The TV cameras don't mind if you're in front of them at all. Sometimes I duck down for them, and they're like, "Why are you doing that? Like you're not in our way." So yeah.
All right. So what was going on out there today? I listened to Sean. Obviously, I wasn't there, but I listened to him on the live stream. Not a whole lot injury-wise, all the things we kind of expected all week, right? But did he say anything that caught your attention this morning?
Not really. He was pretty close to the vest, as he tends to be on a Friday. I do think it was interesting to some of the stuff with Dwayne Carter, who was inactive last week, to kind of hear that they felt he's working his way back from a wrist injury, that they didn't feel like he was back to where they needed him to be to play last week, which is a large part of why he was inactive. And I think that's interesting because he obviously was playing very well before his injury. So they need help on that interior defensive line. That's not exactly a secret. So I think where he stands kind of as we head to the playoffs will be really interesting. And Sean talking about that was pretty interesting and something to keep an eye on for sure. But in terms of this week's injuries, I think it's kind of they're getting healthier. There's no doubt. And Taylor Rapp's questionable, but he was out at practice today, not in a non-contact jersey, just in a normal practice jersey. So to me, that's a pretty positive step for him, potentially being back. So those were the highlights, I think. Other than that, it was kind of yep, it's another Jets week sort of vibe.
So my take on Carter, I don't know what you guys agree. I think he was playing pretty well for a rookie before he got hurt. Then he had the surgery and he was out, whatever it was, 4 or 5 weeks. I don't think he played particularly well when he came back. And I think more than anything, that's why he got benched last week. They knew the Patriots would probably try to run the ball. He hadn't been effective at all. So, I mean, Sean kind of soft-shoed that today and blamed it on maybe he wasn't quite ready to come back, but I think it was performance-based last week. Do you agree with that? Because that's kind of where I sat on that one.
I think so. And I think so too. I could see, a rookie season. He did miss a significant number of games in the middle of his rookie season. I think it was performance-based as well, but I wouldn't be surprised if some of that was related to the injury. As a defensive lineman, you have to have the get off, right? And if his wrist isn't right to get off the line of scrimmage like he needs to, then I could see that impacting his performance. But yeah, they put him out there post-injury and it was not what they needed. And the problem is, as I'm sure you guys agree on, the Patriots ran the ball really, they were able to run the ball. So I think that even though they were mixing things around and trying to find the right combination, it still didn't quite work, which is a concern as we go down the stretch here.
Well, so there's no question about that. Go ahead, Sal. Go ahead.
I was going to say, you mentioned Taylor Rapp now. So if he's out of the non-contact, that's interesting. Because now Cam Lewis, all of a sudden, it seems like they have to have 3 guys out every week in the secondary. So if Rapp comes back, I've got to believe, Alaina, that they would probably Kareem Jackson still has one more elevation, right? They could do that if Lewis and or Hamlin can't play. Do you think there's an outside chance that they would try to get Micah Hyde up this week if he can't, if Rapp or Hamlin can't play, or Lewis? I don't think so.
I don't think so. I think it's like the most outside chances. Sean actually talked about Micah today too. And it was very much so like, yeah, he's here to help, behind the scenes, not on the football field. So I think I could see that more down the line. I don't see that again for this week. I would honestly use up Kareem Jackson's elevations first anyway, because he's been here all year. He can fill into that spot. Like, why not use up his practice squad elevations if you have to? And then you have Micah on the back burner. But it does not sound like, I think everyone wants to see Micah on the field, but I don't think they're in a rush to really get him out there.
Well, he made reference to the fact that he needs to put on weight too, and that it's a process coming back from where he was to get his body, legitimately in game condition where he could come in as the veteran and contribute. We all know what he's doing behind the scenes. Kind of like an additional coach almost with all of his experience and everything that he's accomplished. Let me get a quick word in for the sponsor here, and then we'll get in to this matchup with the Jets, because I do think Alaina and Sal, and we've talked about this, there's legitimate concern with this defense and the front and the ability to stop the run, and I think there's more to touch on that. First off, Bet Online. It's the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for everything football. Head to the website, get in on the action, Bet Online. The game starts here. Speaking of injuries, this from Rich Cimini in terms of the Jets about an hour ago. It looks like Davante Adams returned to practice and appears that he's going to play. Not sure on Sauce Gardner or Quinnen Williams at this point. So the Jets and Rodgers is dealing with, he's banged up as well. So I guess we'll start kind of generally. And Sal, we looked at the Patriots with Ben Volin in a similar way. I mean, how much concern should the Bills have with this particular opponent? And at the time, we felt that the Jet game was more of a concern based on talent and availability than that whatever that semblance of a Patriots roster they put on the field wound up being a competitive game. I feel like this is going to be a competitive game on Sunday. Agree or disagree?
Oh, absolutely. The Jets have a much better roster than the Patriots do, first of all. And, I mean, they're 4-11. Honestly, if they weren't so stupid all season long, they would probably be about a 7-8 team. They've got easily enough talent to be 7-8. They've just done so many stupid things and lost games in such ridiculous ways this season that their record is they're better than their record shows. And I know that's kind of a cliche to say that, but it's true in this case. Plus, this team always gives the Bills trouble. The exception was last year in Orchard Park. The Bills kicked their ass. But otherwise, they have generally been a thorn in the Bills' side. The game earlier this season, the Bills were kind of fortunate to win that game. Zuerlein missed 2 kicks that night, and that might have gone the other way. So I think the Jets are definitely a problem. Dan Dawkins was talking about it yesterday, how the toughest games they play all year are the 6 against the division rivals. And that's, to a large extent, that is pretty true, because those teams know each other so well. So, Alaina, I'll throw it to you. I think the Jets are going to give the Bills all they can handle in a game that the Bills, people are poo-pooing this number 2 seed. They need to win and get that thing locked up, because you don't want Baltimore being the host team for that 2-3 game in the second week of the playoffs.
Yeah, I actually agree with Sal completely. I think actually last week I thought people were underrating, yes, the Patriots roster, we can all agree, is a mess. And they've got guys who probably aren't NFL caliber players playing significant roles for them. But these division games are weird. I think we have to allow for the fact that division games are just a different beast sometimes. And we've seen Josh Allen actually struggle against this Jets defense a lot. He's had a number of issues against them. Not, maybe it's been a couple years, but in this past stretch, it's not great. And I think it could be a challenge. I think it comes to a point where the Bills can just outscore what we've seen from this Jets offense. Just Josh Allen can put more points on the board than I think the Jets can get to. But I don't think I don't see this being one of those where off the gate, they're just blowing out this opponent and that kind of thing, because it's not that type of matchup usually with the Jets. And it's but maybe supposed to rain too, which will be an interesting component, to it as well, especially with this run defense that we've seen give up big run. Like if that happens against the Jets, like that's when games get weird in the rain, like with all that going on. So I do think it's like one of those that like, it looks like it should be one that they win easily, but division games typically don't, like that's not the average of how these division games go.
All right, it's the familiarity, and it's harder to come up with something schematically that's going to throw the opponent off, and that leads to how close these games, and in large part, how they've been historically. So let's keep it with the offense, and kind of coming off of the New England game last week, Alaina, Sal and I found this interesting. A couple of comments from Josh Allen on the postgame. Talked about how with the man coverage, the Patriots were able to take away a lot of the underneath stuff, and that frustrated them from an offensive standpoint, particularly early, right, in that game. And then the comment that did draw a lot of attention is they don't want to show too much at this point late in the year because of that. Everything you do is obviously on film, and it's a copycat league and all of that. How much stock do you put in that? And how well equipped might this Jets defense be, especially when you look at the history here between these two particular opponents, to really slow things down enough for them to be right in the football game? I feel like this is a team that has the ability to do that.
Yeah, I think you put some in it, but I also think like we have to look at the situation behind this game where like the Bills, if they win this game, are the number 2 seed. They lock that down. They get 2 consecutive home games in the playoffs if they win the first one. And I think you have to put like what you got. Not all of it. Maybe there are still some plays you're saving for the playoffs, but knowing that this is a Jets defense that's very familiar with what this offense can do, like you got to use what you got. You got to win this game so that Josh Allen can get a break next week. So I put some stock in it, but I also think they're not running like plays that will help them win. Like I think you have to look at it with like a grain of salt. I also think that like Josh Allen loves, or thrives is a better word, when he's pissed off or slighted. And I think all the MVP talk this week is going to make a pretty pissed off offense in Josh Allen. And I do think that's when he's at his best, is like when people underestimate him. So I think this offense like is not going to be afraid to put a good amount out there this week to win this game. This might be Josh's final like MVP statement. And so I expect to see a pretty big performance from Josh Allen, even though like, sure, I'm sure they are saving some things for the playoffs like he referenced, but you got to win this game and show that he should, put his best performance out there for MVP. And I think this is the kind of game where he like can do just that, even though it is a Jets defense that's familiar with what they're capable of.
Yeah, we were going to transition into MVP talk because it's been pretty hot and heavy this week. But I will say, a lot of times, Josh, Alaina, you're out there every day. A lot of times he speaks in cliches, and he'll just spew the same bullshit that really he doesn't even believe himself. And I don't think for a second that they're going to hold back the offensive game plan in a game they have to win against a division opponent. And plus, the other thing is, too, we're 15 games into this. How much could they really have saved for the postseason? I mean, it's kind of silly. Their playbook isn't that big. So I think they've already shown their bread and butter stuff. There might be a wrinkle here or there. And I'm not saying they're going to use that wrinkle here or there against the Jets, but we're going to see a full-fledged game plan in this game. They're not holding anything back. And if they do, they're going to lose. If they hold back and play a half-ass performance, they're going to lose the game. So that's my take on that. Adam, I know we were going to talk about MVP. If you want to go
let's
there.
Let's go there now. Yeah. Let's go. I mean, Alaina, you're as dialed into it as anyone else is. I mean, is Josh Allen the MVP? How much of an argument could or should be made between he and Lamar Jackson at this point?
I personally think he is. I think it's a difficult one because I actually wrote a story about it this week. Like, if you look at the stats, I mean, Lamar has better stats than Josh. There's not really another way around that. But then last year, Lamar Jackson was MVP, and he didn't have the best stats in the world. Like, his stats are actually, some of them were worse than Josh's were last year. Like, if you look at it depends what you're looking at. Like, you can move it all around so many different ways. But I think what I look at for an MVP is like, if Josh Allen is not on this football team, like, where is this team? Where is this offense? Like, I think Lamar's a great player and very deserving of the award and was last year. But I think that offense, like with Derrick Henry and with some of how it's built around him, like, I think it's a little different than when Josh has been able to do to like escalate the group he has around him and like performing at this level. So to me, I think it's very close. Like I don't think it's like, oh my gosh, Josh by a landslide. But I think what he's done this year with this team and to like that Kansas City game, like what he did in that game, like they didn't win that game if Josh Allen is a playing quarterback, in my opinion. So I think that's the kind of game that wins MVP. But it isn't easy. Like, I think that's why it's like so controversial online is it's like not just like, oh yeah, he did this, so he should be MVP. Like it's very nuanced and it leads to like just some horrible takes and like the internet being a gross place.
Bart Scott's take was horrible. God almighty.
Yeah. But I don't know, Sal, do you think he should be MVP?
Yeah, so here's my thought on this. Last year, I thought it was a farce that Lamar Jackson was named the MVP, especially because it was almost unanimous. That was ridiculous. I mean, that was just utterly the worst vote ever. I'm not saying that Josh should have won it last year, even though he had better numbers, but Lamar should never have been a runaway candidate like he was last season. Now, this season, as you said, it's weird. Lamar's having a better year. There's no denying he's having a better statistical year than he did last year, and he's having a better year than Josh is by the numbers this season. I also will say that, all this odds-on BS, he's the betting favorite, Josh is. They're not voting. Vegas isn't voting for the award. It's the media that votes for the award, and they love them some Lamar. Let's face it. The media, it's almost like they're making up for the fact that back in 2018 when he was drafted, so many people didn't think Lamar was going to go on and be a great quarterback. And it's almost like they're making it up now. Like they're making up for having dissed him then by loving him in these MVP votes. The first time he won it, I thought he deserved it. Last year, he certainly didn't. And I don't think that this is going to be, how would I want to put this? I'll put it this way. I think Josh Allen should be the MVP. I have a funny feeling Lamar Jackson's going to win it again. And I agree with your point. He's got Derrick Henry. He's got a better defense. All right. They have a good record. They're going to win the NFC North or the AFC North now. Josh Allen is more important to his team, I think, overall than Lamar is, which is what people should be looking at, not so much the numbers. But I just have this sense that Lamar is closing with a flourish. If the Bills win this week, Allen's not going to play next week. That could tip the scales, guys, and he could win his third. And Josh, even though he deserves it, might end up not getting it. That's my thought.
Hey, listen, I understand fully the politics of it, but I agree, I think, with both of you in the sense that Josh Allen isn't having as big a year statistically almost by design. It's almost what's made him better, right? Like because of the way he's functioned within this offense and moving on from Stephon Diggs and the turnovers being down, all of those things combined. I mean, I would argue, Sal and I have both said, Alaina, this is the most mature and refined version of Josh Allen that we've seen. The kind that you're not having to make up for some other shortcoming on the team with these crazy statistical performances. This is the kind of quarterback and performer that can win this team, this franchise, this organization, a Super Bowl. I think he's been at his absolute best this year, regardless of what the stats say. And that's why I think within the context, he should be the MVP.
You have to hope that the voters are going to recognize that this is a guy who gave the Chiefs their only loss. They won that game because of Josh Allen. He went into Detroit and ended their 11-game winning streak. He has made huge plays on big stages, right? In the big open window or the island games, they call them. He has stepped up and made big plays in all those games. And, you hope voters are going to see that and recognize that he is really the most important player. Let's face it. Without Josh Allen, a quarterback, what are the Bills this year? The Bills are 8-7, maybe 9-6. I mean, that you can make an argument that they're not even that.
That might be stretching it. That might be stretching itself. 9-6.
With this defense playing the way it is, without Josh Allen outscoring teams, I mean, that to me is what an MVP is all about. Who lifts your team to a 12-3 record in what was supposed to be a transition season.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. All right. So we've all, Alaina, anything else you want to add to that before we move on?
No, I would just second everything you guys said. And I do think I think it's a really big deal that the Bills can win this game, and it makes all the sense in the world to sit Josh next week. But I think that is the kind of thing that can lose him this MVP. It shouldn't. That's not how it should be accounted for. But Lamar's going to have to play next week. and
That's
he
right.
can, like, let's say he puts up it's like that's their lasting memory, right, of the voters. That's the kind of stuff that sways. It shouldn't, in my opinion, sway it, but like I do think that's a really big deal and something to keep in mind here.
They're playing at home against the Browns, who have a decent defense, but they're the Browns. I mean, they're going to be running for the bus, you would think. He could put up big numbers in that game and really put this thing away. So, yeah, I know Bills fans aren't going to like that take, and I want him to win. I think he deserves it. I like Josh. He deserves to win that award. I just know how these voters are, and these voters love Lamar Jackson. So if he can overcome that, that's a hell of an accomplishment for Allen. And regardless of what Bart Scott says, it's not the most important thing on Josh Allen's plate. This, Alaina and Adam and myself know that he doesn't give a shit about the MVP. He wants to win a Super Bowl.
No, because that's ultimately.
So
it was.
I mean, ultimately,
when I saw it. I was like, what is he talking about? What is this guy talking about? Oh my God, it was unbelievable.
All right, so the question is the Super Bowl, right? And what we haven't really addressed in a significant or as significant a way on this show so far is how vulnerable are they from a defensive standpoint? Because we've seen really trends develop and what they've been willing to give up during the course. They'll give the ground yards up, but by and large, they've been good against the pass, and we've seen that affected in recent weeks. I mean, as you look toward the postseason now, how much of a vulnerability and a liability is this defense at this point? Alaina, go ahead. We'll start with you.
I mean, I think, and I know from Sal's tweets that he agrees with this, but like this third down defense to me is like the big concern, especially as Sal, I'm sure, agrees, on third and long. Like it's this situation where their third down defense is the last 3 weeks. And of course, they've been injured. They're dealing with a number of injuries, but still, you still have to they've been worse in the league in third down in the last 3 weeks. And I think that's not something that's new. It's not just that they're injured. This has been an issue all season long. And I think it can really yes, it's the run defense, but it's also sometimes they just cannot get off the field. And against someone like a Patrick Mahomes, a Lamar Jackson, where you beat them by keeping them on the bench. This defense, I think, is a concern. I do. I think we're at a point I think getting Rasul Douglas back this week is great. I think Matt Milano's good to have back. He's not the Matt Milano we saw before he got injured, unfortunately. It's hard because he's had these injuries, but I think this defense is a real concern, and until they show us otherwise, we have to treat it like that because they are just having too hard of a time getting off the field, creating pressure, solving these third down issues. I asked Bobby Babich about it this week, and he was like, yeah, we fix one thing and then another issue starts, and they just cannot figure out the right way to stop it, and I think that's going to hurt them at times until they figure it out.
I had that number. I had a note in one of my stories earlier in the week. They're on 3rd and 7 or longer this season. They've given up 34%. There's 2 teams in the league that are better on third down defense overall, all third downs. And there's 6 teams that are within 1.5 percentage points of 34%. The Bills are doing that just on third and long. And Alaina's right. The last 3 weeks, they're 60%. It's egregiously bad. So as they, I don't know if it'll be, well, it could be a factor with Aaron Rodgers, Devontae. This offense with the Jets, it could be a factor. But in the playoffs, she's absolutely right. They can't play third down defense like this and expect to win because they won't. Unless Josh Allen goes off every game and scores 35 to 40 points, they're not going to win playing defense the way they've played the last few weeks.
They rely on turnovers too, which I think is sorry, Adam, but they rely on turnovers. And if they don't get them, that's when this defense, that's what happened in the Rams game. That was their only game this year without a takeaway. And then when that doesn't happen.
You can't rely on that because when you go up against a good, well-disciplined offense, they can obviously control the football and protect it. And I would just add this to what you both just said. And I go back as far as the AFC Championship game loss in Kansas City. It was apparent that the defensive front and pass rush was an issue. Right. And we've seen them address that repeatedly and in meaningful ways. And I just feel like there's a level of, and Alaina, you referenced this off the top of the show here. There's just a level of inconsistency up front in that area that I would have a concern about too in looking toward the postseason. I think
Yeah,
that's a
their defensive
shortcoming.
line is underwhelmed, right? Their defensive line is underwhelmed for several years, despite all the investment with high draft picks and free agent signings, and it's been a problem. And I'm not quite sure we can expect a whole lot different this year. Roussel was played very well when he's played very well this year. I still think he has an extra gear, by the way, but he's played well enough. Vaughn's been a little bit better. Well, he's been a lot better than he was last year, but he's been serviceable this season. Ed Oliver's been disappointing. Daquan Jones is starting to come around. They've got issues. They've got issues up front. And Bobby Babich, I thought they did a good job in what game was it, Alaina, where they showed a little more. Was it last week, right? They blitzed a little bit more last week. They got creative, sent a couple corner blitzes. He's going to have to manufacture some pressure. And of course, he's got to wait till the defensive secondary is healthy, and that should be for the playoffs. But when they are healthy, he's going to have to manufacture some pressure and trust that his guys can cover if they're in a blitz, because the front four just ain't doing it. They're not getting it organically enough to win games, I think, in the playoffs.
We saw that some in the Detroit game too, where it was like they got a little, there was like at the beginning of the game when the defense got pretty much won the game, arguably, with those two
early
drives where they got them off the field. That was you need more of that, where it was yeah, you're going to send a quarter blitz, do stuff like that. And it worked early, and then obviously things fell apart, in the third quarter. But I think I agree with you. I think they've shown that at times these flashes, and the defensive line, we've seen at times that they can play at a different level, but it's been so inconsistent. And it's been shown in the run defense. It's shown in terms of getting pressure. It's shown in a bunch of ways. And how many times have we heard Sean be it's, winning the line of scrimmage, and they just have not done that on defense consistently.
Agreed, and well said. All right, 1:00 kickoff Sunday out at Highmark. I've kind of forgotten what that was like.
Alaina knows how cranky I get at 4:30 at night games.
I'm excited. This is a 1:00 game is very exciting. We should all celebrate and enjoy it. That's how.
All right, I look forward to seeing the both of you. Both of you, by the way, with front row seats in the game day press box as well, and I'm somewhere up in the back, and
as it
noted.
Should be.
Yes.
But we're just happy to have you back in the press box. It's lovely
I'm
to have
happy
you
to
back
be
there.
I'm happy to be there. The coffee will be hot, right, Alaina?
Yeah.
Hot coffee.
Absolutely.
All right. So, Sal, thanks as always, man. Rochester Democrat and Chronicle, all the coverage. Alaina Getzenberg, ESPN and ESPN.com, working the Bills beat. Thanks so much. Total pleasure having you with us here.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
My favorite ESPN writer.
Oh, God. All right.
Who's covered the Bills?
Oh, my God. All right. And the last time I'm on the pod. No.
Yes.
We'll pick this up on Sunday.
Being here, Alaina.
Thanks for joining us here on Bleav in Bills.